All right. Hello and welcome to today's video where I'm going to be talking about the concept or the idea of working from a place of self-neutrality instead of trying to force yourself to be in a state of self-love. And this is a concept that I absolutely love, and I kind of can't believe it's taken me all 400 years that I've been on YouTube to talk about this specifically, because I think that it is such a valuable tool and a valuable thing that we can use on our path of self-love that, yeah, like I say, I just think I'm so glad that someone asked this of me recently. So I essentially just got a question from someone a while ago, and they were basically just like, do you think that there's any benefit to the idea of practicing self-neutrality instead of trying to get to a state of self-love? And my answer was absolutely yes. This is something that I think is incredibly helpful and incredibly useful, and let's talk about it more. Okay, so obviously this whole channel, this whole kind of perception trainers thing that I'm doing here is about establishing a capacity to be your own safe place. So that is kind of what I mean when I say self-love, because I know that right now self-love is like a really popular concept, and it's a really, yeah, like I say, it's a really popular concept. A lot of people are talking about it, and I like to bring a little bit more of a definition to it and a little bit more specificity, because like I say, I think it means a lot of different things to a lot of different people. And so when I'm talking about self-love, what I'm talking about is, like I say, that capacity to be our own safe place, that capacity to be on our own side when we're struggling, when we're confused, when we're happy, when things are going great, that capacity to step into that compassion for ourselves and then curiosity for what we're feeling, what we're experiencing, what's going on with us, what we want, what we need, why we're in pain, why we're experiencing joy, so that we can better understand ourselves, and that helps us to better understand reality, and it helps us to be better problem solvers. It helps us to be able to be more emotionally intelligent, and it helps us to process our emotions when we are experiencing them instead of them getting all backlogged. It helps us, like I say, to discover who we are and what we want and what works for us and what doesn't work for us, and then it helps us to slowly start to build a life that, to the degrees that we have control, we can make a life that works for us. So again, I think that this is another big concept that maybe I'll do a whole other video on, but this idea that self-love helps us to shape a life that works for us versus us living constantly trying to force ourselves into a predetermined box that society has set, or that culture has set, or that family has set for how we should be in order for it to be good for us, right? Because again, I understand that there are a million different blueprints for how to live life. There are a million different religions, cults, cultures, there's ways of life, all of these ideas for the right way, quote unquote, to live life. And again, what do we even mean when we say the right way? Usually what we mean is to have the most amount of pleasure and the least amount of pain that we can possibly have on this planet. And for each of us, that's going to involve slightly different things, because we're all slightly different people who have slightly different values and slightly different things that we care about and things that we don't care about. And so, like I say, there's all these different blueprints for how to live a good life, and a lot of us spend our entire lives trying to fit ourselves into a blueprint, or continually jumping from blueprint to blueprint to blueprint, trying to do the blueprint perfectly, and finding that if we can't force ourselves into the blueprint perfectly, we feel like we failed, or we feel like the blueprint is 100% wrong and we just want to throw the whole thing out. Instead of being able to understand that we are a unique individual that has a unique character, and there are going to be things in lots of different blueprints that do work for us, and then things about certain blueprints that don't work for us, and then being able to navigate building a life with taking the parts of this that work and the parts of this that work and the parts of this that work, and then really being able to observe the parts of this that don't work, the parts of this that don't feel good, the parts of this that aren't helping me live my purpose, aren't helping me live or earn enough money to survive, that aren't helping me have healthy relationships to the degree that I can. That we can start to sort these things out, and rather than thinking that either we failed because we can't live perfectly to the blueprint, or we're trying to do the blueprint and we can't do it perfect, thinking we suck and there's something wrong with us that we can't perfectly fit a blueprint, or saying, well, that blueprint is 100% wrong, throw the whole thing out, everything is bad about it. Like I say, with self-love, that's when we start to say, okay, I'm going to investigate. I'm going to have compassion for myself. I'm going to assume innocence in myself. I'm not just feeling pain for no reason. I'm not rebelling from the blueprint for no reason. I'm not suffering for no reason. There's something going on, and it's not that I'm horrible or flawed or broken. And then I'm going to get curious about what hurts and why doesn't it work and what's not working about it. And like I say, when we have this perspective, this self-love perspective, that I am a unique individual and that's okay, that there's not something broken and wrong and bad about me, that I can't fit into society or how it's being dictated to me, or that I can't perfectly fit into any of these things. I'm rather here to be on my own side so that I can figure out a way of life that works for me. Like that's the self-love perspective. And then understanding too that this, when we're doing this, that as we discover what is right for us, and as we discover what actually feels good for us, and what gives us good results long term, we are going to discover more and more and more that because we're basing this not just on intellect, but also on feeling, that more of our actions and more of our intentions and more of our outcomes are better for the general population. I truly believe that we are community-based beings, and again, that's not necessarily a belief. That's pretty set in stone from observation, that we are social creatures and we tend to live best in community. And what that means is that when we are really doing what's good for ourselves, when we are really doing what's healthy for ourselves, generally speaking, this is going to be what's best for the greater population. Now, that doesn't always mean that what we're doing is going to make those who are immediately around us happy right now, because a lot of the time it doesn't. And a lot of times when we're breaking out of just conditional, or the conditioned ways of being of our religions and our governments and our education systems, and the ways that our parents passed down their trauma to us and they had theirs passed down from theirs, and all these things, as we're breaking these patterns, we are going to make people upset. We are going to find that we have to learn how to be okay with making people upset. We are going to have to learn that sometimes the healthiest thing to do for ourselves and for everyone is to disrupt the way that things currently are, and that we're not doing that against people, and we're not doing that to screw someone else over or to punish somebody or whatever it is. We're doing it from a place of like, this is just what's healthiest for me. And even if the people that I'm disconnecting from or changing my ways of relating to continue on the way that they are, because we understand that we don't have control over other people, we can't make other people change just because we're changing, that we can stop participating in the harm. We can stop participating in the cycle to the degree that we're able, and that is a net positive for everybody, even if it makes people upset. So that's my long-winded kind of take on what self-love is. It is helping us establish an understanding of ourselves and an understanding of reality at the same time, and where those two things conflict, because that's going to be a thing that all of us have to face, and where those two things align, and how we can, like I say, craft a life around our specific needs and our specific wants and our specific desires that feels good for us within the context of the reality we actually live in. So understanding that I don't know that anyone can create a perfect life for themselves. I don't know that anyone can create perfect ideal circumstances and a life that always feels good and there's absolutely nothing about it that doesn't feel good. That's not what self-love is. Because that's not reality. We're never going to live in a perfect reality where everything is aligned and perfect. We are going to do our best with what we have. We are going to find the power that we have. We are going to create the life as best that we can. And that requires that we get on our own side. Like that we be people who are on our own side and we can be there for ourselves and we can understand ourselves. Because all of that information means the more we know about ourselves, the more we know about what we need, the more we know about what works for us, the more empowerment we will have to create it. Not that we can always create the perfect thing, because again, we live in a reality where we don't have control over everything, and that's always going to be how it is. But the more information we have, the more power we have within the context that we live in. Okay, so that's what self-love is. And getting to that place where we can fundamentally assume innocence in ourselves. Getting to that place where we can fundamentally say, okay, this hurts, it's not because I suck. This isn't working, it's not because I'm broken, wrong, and bad. I'm engaging in these behaviors that have negative outcomes and negative side effects, and I'm hurting myself and others, and that's because I'm fucked up and just not trying hard enough and doing all these things. When we can get to a place where we're like, okay, yes, there's harm. Yes, there's pain. Yes, there's negative consequences. What's going on? Why? And I mean that why, not again, why am I doing this? What's wrong with me? How am I fucked up? What do I need to self-improve and self-help and fix about myself? And what parts of myself do I need to get rid of? And how do I fix my ego? And how do I transcend myself? But we say, okay, no, I'm doing what I'm doing for a reason. I learned this somewhere along the way. I'm adapting, I'm coping. There were things that were passed down to me through my lineage, through my DNA, through all sorts of things. I'm existing within a context. Yes, I'm existing within a government structure. I'm existing within an education structure. I'm existing within a connection to abundance or to provision, not provision, all of these things. I'm existing within the context of a brain and a body that were brought up with patterns that tell us that acceptance equals provision equals safety equals survival, and that rejection equals no provision equals danger equals death. And so when what I want and what I need and what I actually feel conflicts with the love and approval of those around me, I'm gonna have a hard time with that. When we can see that, when we can understand that, and we can, like I say, live from that context of there's nothing wrong with me. I'm here to figure out what works for me and how to make that as possible within the context of my surroundings for the rest of my life. That's when we're living the self-love path. We're just assuming innocence in ourselves, and we're getting curious, and we're learning. We're learning about ourselves, we're learning about reality, and that is where our power is, in learning this stuff and figuring out what the best case scenario is for us in any given circumstance. So like I say, when we can live from that place, we're on the self-love path. And that, to me, is the most empowering thing, because it's aligned with reality. And like I say, it's not always, okay, good, I understand myself, I understand reality, so now I can create my perfect reality. It's just, what can I do within the circumstances that actually exist? And like I say, when we can live from that curiosity place and that compassion place, number one, we're hacking our biology. And that word is so overused and terrible, but I feel like it's the best word in this circumstance, in this context. We are hacking our biology in that we are understanding that when we feel loved, when we feel acceptance, when we feel support, when we feel validation, the physiological changes that happen allow us to come into that rest and digest parasympathetic state. And it is in that state that we are our most intelligent, and we are our most capable of problem solving. We are our most capable of creative solutions, and we are our most capable of changing the patterns that we're in. Because that, again, those two things, we're the most capable of seeing what we've never seen before, of understanding what we've never understood before, of being able to take in information that we've never taken in before. And we're more able and more apt to be able to act on that information in new ways. And that is how we slowly, like I say, build a life that works better and better and better for ourselves. The more we can understand why we're doing what we're doing, the more we can understand the outcomes that we're getting and why those outcomes are the way that they are, the more we can understand about ourselves and reality, the more we can change our behavior so that we can understand this is the outcome I desire, this is the thing I want, this is how I want to feel, this is how I want to live, these are the things that fulfill me, these are the things that feel right for me, this is the trajectory that I want my life to be on. The more we can compare and contrast what we're doing with the outcomes that we want, and the more, like I say, we'll be able to change the patterns that we're in. The more we understand that as we feel rejected, as we feel like we're not loved, as we feel like we're not supported, as we feel like we're not validated, that triggers our nervous system into a state of fear and shutdown. And we go into stress, and what happens physiologically, biologically, is that when our bodies go into that state of fear and stress, there's a reduction in how much information our brain takes in. We then filter out all new information because that makes things complicated. And we go into pattern repetition. So as much as we might intellectually understand, no, if I keep doing this, it's going to be a bad outcome, we can't actually make ourselves change our behavior because our bodies think we're unsafe. And when our bodies think we're unsafe, due to the biology that we all inherited, the body is going to say, do what you've always done. Because to your body, what you've always done is the reason you're still alive. These programs that your body runs over and over again, we get triggered, and then we're in our behavior, we're in our addiction, we lash out, we do whatever it is. Yes? These things that we look in ourselves and we're thinking, right, I keep trying to change myself. I keep looking at the negative outcomes of my actions. I keep intellectualizing how bad this is, and I keep making a plan that I'm never going to do that again, I'm never going to say that again, I'm never going to be like that again, and then I'm back in it, and I don't know why. It's when we feel rejected, when we feel scared, when we feel like we're not going to be okay, the body goes into fight or flight, and when the body's in fight or flight, it's going to go and do what it's always done, because like I say, that's how our ancestors survived. To be able to hear a rustle in the bush and to run up a tree without thinking about it, that would have saved that person's life. The person that heard the rustle in the bush and had to turn around and figure out what it was, and then, oh, it's a lion. Oh, that lion is running towards me. Maybe I should do something about that. What should I do? I don't know. That person would have gotten eaten. So those traits didn't get passed on. The traits of trigger, do what you've always done, that got passed on, because those are the ones that survived. So we still have that biology. When we're triggered, we do what we've always done. So again, and then if we can understand that the way that we're raised, each one of us, in our childhood, in our infancies, the very first program we all get from our caregivers about what reality is caregivers are my source of everything. Caregivers are God. They have everything. They have the knowledge of everything from our perspective, our childhood perspective, our childhood nervous systems. Caregivers know and have everything. Their love and their approval is what makes them give it to me. When they pull away from me, when my source pulls away from me, I am in danger. So do whatever I have to do so that I will be loved and approved of by these gods who control everything. you see, and repeat the behaviors that get those good results, and suppress and deny and get rid of anything about myself or any behavior or any way of being that gets me rejected. That's our first program. So we're all running that program. We are all running acceptance equals love equals acceptance equals provision equals staying alive. And rejection equals everything I need going away equals death, pain, suffering. So when we're in fear, death, pain, suffering, our bodies are going to do what we've always done, no matter how much we try to stop ourselves from doing it, or change our behavior, or intellectualize. If any of you have ever had that experience of watching yourself do your thing when you're like, gah, right? Watching yourself get triggered by something someone said and then say that thing you always say, which you know is going to make a fight, and you just don't want to do it, but you just do it over and over and over again, and you're watching yourself do it, and you're like, why am I doing this? Because you're scared, because you're in rejection, and your body is pushing you to do what you've always done. Because to your body and to your brain, that is why you are alive. So, this is why self-love is like what I think of as the ultimate biohack, is when we can learn to have access to that feeling of love, that feeling of acceptance, that feeling of safety, that feeling of I'm on my own side no matter what, it's okay. We give ourselves the best chance we have. So again, not perfect, not going to solve everything, but we give ourselves the best chance we have to understand what's going on in a new way, to see our triggers, to see our past, to see our lineage, to see all these things, to see reality and the greater reality for what it actually is, take in more information, which again, these are the two kind of things we need to be able to do something different. We need new information, we need new understanding, and then we need to be able to act on that new understanding to prove to ourselves whether our new understanding actually works. And when we are in that state of feeling loved, that's when our biology is primed for us to be able to do that. For us to be able to take in new information we've never taken in before, which then gives us the capacity to do something we've never done before, and the capacity to actually follow through on that new thing. Yeah? So this is why, again, I think self-love is like the foundation for everything. You want to learn about your body, you want to learn about relationships, you want to learn about your career, you want to learn about anything in reality, anything about yourself. If you can start with curiosity and compassion for yourself and curiosity, you are then opening your intellect and you're opening yourself up to feeling what you feel. Because that is another part of our intelligence that most of us don't have access to. How we feel, and I've talked about this in past videos, right? The intellect is the manager. The intellect knows everything that we currently know, has taken in all of our current experiences, and is operating based on everything from the past, which is great. It's a lot. That's super awesome and helpful. The feeling, our feeling bodies and our emotions are like the CEO. They're like the bird's eye view. They can see the long game. And when we have access to both, the body and the emotions that are saying, that doesn't feel right, that does feel right, that's like the CEO saying, like, this is the general direction we want to head. This is the big vision. This is the, like, goodness we want to head towards. And then the manager, the mind, can start to say, okay, how do I make that a reality within what actually exists? How do I practically take this, like, this is what feels good and I want to head in this direction, even though my brain doesn't understand that at all and I have no experience for that or no context for that or whatever? Then the brain can start to say, okay, well, maybe we can read a book on it. Maybe we can take a step towards that and just see what happens and learn, and this pattern recognition thing. So when we're in that state of self-love, we are also accessing our feelings. We are accessing that extra intelligence, that bird's eye view, the intuition, the higher wisdom and higher guidance, whatever you want to call it. And this, again, gives us more capacity to act on both the information from our intellect and our feeling than just being stuck in our patterns. So that's what self-love is all about, right? Self-love is about being able to learn and change and do new things and follow a radical path, or a path of that feeling path that doesn't necessarily logically make sense in the beginning, and usually it doesn't, and being able to work with that, okay? But getting to that place where we can have compassion for ourselves in our behaviors. Because again, this all sounds great, right? Like this, like, yes, great, of course. I'm doing everything I'm doing for a reason. Everything's a pattern. If I can just be nice to myself, then I can understand things differently and I can do different stuff and like, woohoo, self-love. But in real reality, what this actually looks like is we have to then be able to look at our worst behaviors, quote unquote, I'm putting air quotes around worst, our most harmful and destructive behaviors, the things that we've been told, this is what's bad about you, the things that have gotten us rejected and make us feel the most unsafe and are like can actually make us unsafe, like physically actually be unsafe, being rejected and experiencing abuse or any kind of actual harm based on being rejected, that's one thing. And that fear, that biological, if I'm rejected, I'm going to die, even if it's not logically true or true in real reality, both exist. It's learning to embrace all that stuff and to look at it through a lens of goodness and through a lens of innocence, which is the exact opposite of what all of us, most likely, have been trained to do our entire lives. Right? It is a complete shift. It's a 180 switch from there's something wrong with me, I don't fit in, this is a bad thing about me, to I'm doing this for a good reason, there's positive intention here, what do I need and what do I want and what's really going on with me, right? And again, and I want to make this clear, that this does not always mean that when we love ourselves and we accept ourselves and we embrace ourselves, that we say these harmful behaviors that I'm involved in are just fine and I'm just going to keep doing them forever. No, because I understand that sometimes self-love and self-acceptance and looking at everything as innocent can be interpreted as then I'm just giving myself permission to let myself off the hook and just be a horrible person for the rest of my life. And I get that, but that's not what this is, okay? Again, when we are truly discovering why we're doing what we're doing, we are always going to discover that there's an innocence behind what we're doing, that we learn to do what we're doing based on needs not being met, based on parts of ourselves not being welcomed and welcomed in our community, in our family, and whatever it was, and this is how we've learned to navigate that. We're all, a pattern of a way of being has been passed down to us mentally, emotionally, genetically, that this is, we're never going to discover that we are just choosing to be harmful and terrible. That's the point. We're never going to discover that we're addicted, that we're hurting ourselves, that we're hurting other people, because one day we just decided we wanted to do that. We're always going to discover that we were traumatized in some way, we were scared in some way, we've adapted in some way, we got passed down a certain behavior pattern or way of being in some way, and that we're doing what we're doing to try to keep ourselves safe. We're doing what we're doing to try to meet needs. We're doing what we're doing to try to, like I say, make life as good for ourselves as it can be based on what we currently understand and based on what we understood as children all moving forward. We're going to understand that our behaviors built on themselves, that we didn't just get to adulthood in neutral. Everything was fine, everything was great, we understood how reality worked, we understood what we wanted and what we needed, we understood our bodies, we understood our relationships, everything was great, and we just decided to fuck it up. We're never going to discover that. We're always going to discover that our behaviors built on themselves, that our patterns built on themselves, that And it's usually so much more complicated than we think it's going to be, because again, this means so much of the time we have to literally rearrange our foundation of what a good and a bad thing is. We have to rearrange, we have to rediscover or discover for the first time needs that we have that may never have been on our radar, and that we're getting met through our behavior that we don't even know that that's a need that you could have. Okay? Like I like to give the analogy of a society that has said that all foods that contain vitamin C are bad foods, and they make you bad if you eat them. So in this society, all foods that contain vitamin C are thrown in the garbage immediately. However, we are a human species, and our physical bodies, and if you don't believe that this is true, just go with me on the metaphor, require vitamin C to live. And if you don't believe we require vitamin C, just replace it with any nutrient. The body needs nutrients, okay? And there's this nutrient-rich food that we throw away and that we've demonized. And then what that means is that everyone in the culture doesn't have that nutrient. And some people's bodies are a little bit better at adapting to that than others. But basically everyone is going to have some form of dis-ease based on this nutrient deficiency. And then in the culture, that's just going to be normalized. So there's going to be parts of that disease, so say like loose teeth and aching gums that bleed easily, that's just normal. That's just how it is. That everyone has that, it's fine, whatever. But then the people who have more severe reactions to the lack of vitamin C, like the really poor wound healing and lack of collagen in their skin, and so they like I say, they bruise easily, the scurvy stuff, basically. They are seen as like the weak ones who have something wrong with them. And then your two options are to try to medicate, try to ignore it, try to say that it's fine, or you start eating the oranges from the garbage. So you have two, right? We have this society that says vitamin C is not a thing we need, and in fact, all these vitamin C rich foods make you terrible. If you consume them, you are a bad person and you get rejected. Yeah? And then some people seem to do a little bit better without it. Some people do a little bit worse. And then your two options are to get on and get along and be in pain like everyone else, and then cope and numb and do all these things to make it so that you don't feel it. You complain about it, in which case you are the problem. There's something wrong with you. We're all fine. Why can't you get along? Or you start eating the vitamin C rich foods out of the garbage, and it starts to kind of cure your scurvy stuff, but because the food was in the garbage, it comes with bacteria and it makes you feel sick to your stomach. So now everything just feels terrible. It feels like no matter what we do, we're fucked. Because this need for vitamin C is something that the culture just doesn't understand. And we've demonized it. So then this work then becomes about, okay, I'm the person who keeps eating the oranges out of the garbage. Rather than looking at myself as disgusting and wrong and horrible, and there's just something wrong with me, we start to say, okay, what are the positive benefits that happen when I eat these oranges out of the garbage? Because yes, I get sick. There's bacteria on them and it makes me ill. But some of the payoff is my teeth feel better, my gums feel better, my skin heals better. All of these things are happening that I'm like better off than everyone else around me. So what's going on here? And then we start to understand maybe there's something positive and beneficial about these oranges. Maybe it's the fact that the oranges are in the garbage that's bad, and not the fact that it's oranges themselves that are bad. And we have to then completely rearrange our understanding of what is good and bad, right and wrong, beneficial and not beneficial. And we've picked apart. It's not that eating oranges is bad, like everyone said they were. You see what I'm saying? We eat the oranges out of the garbage, we get a little bit sick, we think, oh, see, everyone's right. Oranges are evil, oranges are bad. I'm evil, I'm bad. We start to say, well, no, I'm doing it for a reason. Why am I doing it? Well, because it makes these other symptoms go away. So what's going on here? And we, like I say, we tease apart what is beneficial and what is not. And we start to discover a need that we may have never understood we had before. And then we start to be able to source some oranges that weren't thrown in the garbage, and then we don't get the sickness from the bacteria from the garbage oranges, and we get the healing that comes from eating vitamin C rich foods when we were deficient before. And all of a sudden, we realize it wasn't a terrible thing for me to be eating these foods. It was a complete misunderstanding. That's hard, right? And like I say, we are going to trigger ourselves when we start to look at our behaviors and our ways of being that we have grown up forever being told are wrong and bad as innocent and good, as in that there might be some goodness in there. And again, I want to make it clear that as we do this work, we don't always discover that there is a better way of doing things and that we can actually do that. Okay, some of the time we discover that our addictions or whatever that we're doing, we're coping for a reason, and it could be the pain that we were in and the stuff that we went through, we're not able to heal it, or we don't have the tools and the resources, and we're just going to have these behaviors for the rest of our lives in some ways. Sometimes we discover we need extra help, like therapy or medication or any of these things to help us either like get over the hump of being able to do something different, because we also have to understand that when we've done something repetitively for a very, very long time, that it's not even necessarily that we can use our willpower or love or internal support to get ourselves to change. Like sometimes our biology just takes over so strongly that we need extra support to change our habits and to break our cycles. And it's, again, not to say that we're going to discover that what we're doing now is totally fine and innocent and everything is great. We acknowledge that there might be harm, and we acknowledge that there's pain. And like I say, we work with that. We work with how can I start to meet my needs in different ways and better ways, and then hopefully reduce my dependence on these things. How can I use other tools, like I say, therapy or medication or any of these things, to help me reduce my dependency on these things that are painful? And then how can I make room for some of these things might just be triggers for me forever, and I'm here to support myself. I'm here to be on my own side because it's not my fault and I didn't choose it. No one that I know has ever said, yeah, no, I had the ability to just go and have a healthy relationship dynamic, or I could just always be in these kind of shitty abusive relationships and I'm just choosing to be in the shitty abusive ones. You never have that. There was never a moment where you had the option to do the healthy thing or to do the unhealthy thing and you just chose to do the unhealthy thing. You're always doing the unhealthy thing because that was the best you knew at the time. It matched the information you had at the time. It became a habit, it became a pattern. You don't see any other way. And that's why we need that love to show us new and different ways. We have to be able to open our perspective. And this takes time. And this is difficult. So like I say, sometimes we need a step of not being asked to love these parts of ourselves that have gotten us rejected for our whole lives. Sometimes we need that intermediate step of not being asked to love our behaviors that are clearly causing us pain and causing other people pain. Because that, like I say, switching from this is horrible about me and this is causing me all this pain, and if I could just change, and then again, right, like the pile on top of that, just how much our media and our culture tells us you have to fix this thing about yourself, and here's the answer, and if you do this, and if you do these healing works, and if you do this spiritual growth, and if you do these and do all that, you'll finally change and become better, and then this won't be a part of your life anymore, and then you'll have this happily ever after, right? Your life is going to be great if you could just get rid of this thing. We're promised that so much that to let go of that and to say I'm going to have to discover who I am and what I want and what actually works for me and what doesn't, and then having to have the sober reality of like, how can I work that within the reality that I live in? That's hard. It's hard to make that shift, which is why the concept of neutrality can be so useful. So when I'm talking about self-neutrality, what I think I'm really saying is like, this is how we develop that witness part of ourselves. Because I fundamentally believe that learning to witness your own behavior just without judging it is the first step to being able to get clarity on why you're doing what you're doing, clarity on who you really are, clarity on what you want, clarity on what's not working around you, clarity on the pain, clarity on all this stuff, is we have to be able to witness. We have to be able to look at it. And this doesn't mean that we spiritually bypass and we don't have our feelings. It means that we are able to simultaneously or in order process our feelings, validate how we're feeling, validate that we hate that we're doing this again, validate that we hate that we're getting rejected, validate that we hate this part of ourselves, validate all that. Make room for those feelings. And then, can we just observe ourselves as though we were observing someone else? Neutral. Like, we're just going to get curious. What do I see if I just look at myself? Right? It's taking this other perspective, because, like, again, most of us are living from an assumption. We're automatically assuming this is wrong, this is bad, I should be able to not do this anymore. I got this question a while ago. Someone says, like, does this self-love work count when we know that what we're doing is wrong and bad, and we should be able to do something different, and we still just don't? We don't change our habits, and we're not doing it. And I'm like, this counts the most when we're in a state where we think we should be able to do something different, and we can't. Because when we are in that state again of, I think I should be able to do something different and I can't, what that really means is either I'm not seeing why I'm doing what I'm doing, I'm not understanding it, it's meeting a need, or it's a pattern that I've been in for a long time, and I don't understand that. And, again, to actually change our behaviors, to change the way that we respond to trigger, we have to first navigate getting our same need that we're getting met through our current behavior in a new way, over and over and over and over and over again, so that the body learns to trust that the new way actually gives better results than the old way, before your body's going to choose the new way, before the new way is going to become the thing that you automatically do. And so what that means is usually we have to give ourselves space and time to do the old thing and to experiment with new things at the same time. To make it okay that we're going to do our old behavior, and then to slowly weave in new and different ways. So again, we start with that observation to start to get to understand why we're doing what we're doing, the needs that are being met, the things that we're getting out of it, the positive intention. And then we start to say, okay, what are some other ways that I can get those same positive results with less negative result? And we start experimenting with that. We start experimenting with doing those things while we continue to do the old thing. And we, over and over and over again, do the old thing and the new thing, do the old thing and the new thing, do the old thing and the new thing, until eventually the body learns that the new thing works, we live, we survive, and that it actually works better. And then the body will choose the new thing. But that, again, requires that we first got compassionate about why we're doing what we're doing. We got really clear on the needs being met, on what we want, on the pain that we're avoiding, on whatever's going on. We got clear on, and then again, sometimes that means we had to change something about our lives that we thought was right for us, but it isn't. We start to understand that the reason I'm doing this behavior is because I'm coping with the pain of my job that I thought was the right thing for me, that I was told my whole life I have to do this, that this is what success is, this is the kind of career I should have. And then we get more and more honest with ourselves. We feel more and more. And then we get to a point of like, okay, well, I'm doing this because, right, I'm coping every night because I don't like my job. And kind of like coming to that revelation that it's not that I have this perfect career and I'm sabotaging myself every night with my Netflix binge. And if I could just stop binging on Netflix, I'd have this perfect life. It's like, yeah, well, if you stop binging on Netflix, usually you have way more pain. Because the reality is, the Netflix is helping you numb out from the pain of your career. So it wouldn't be that you get rid of the Netflix and now everything is great. Because the thing that was driving you to do the Netflix in the first place was the career you thought was right for yourself. Because that's what you'd been conditioned to do your whole life. And then having to face that. And then having to face what that means in terms of like, okay, well, if this isn't the career, then what am I supposed to do? Am I a bad person? What's the right thing for me? All of that. We have to first be able to observe in order for any of this to be able to take place. We have to be able to observe our feelings. We have to be able to observe our behaviors. We have to be able to observe from this neutral place so that we can understand it, so that we're not going on our preconceived notions and our preconceived judgments. So like right now, all of us, to some degree, have this behavior that we think we should be able to not do anymore, have this part of self that we automatically reject. It's bad and wrong and harmful. I have this way of being, I have this personality defect, I have this thing, this overthinking, this whatever, I'm too emotional, I'm too needy, whatever it is for you. I do this thing that's wrong and bad, I'm hurting myself, I'm hurting others. And we have all of these stories and all of this assumption about these things that we're on a loop. We're continually over and over again seeing the same thing, taking in the same information, doing similar results or similar actions to try to get a new result, and the results that we're getting are the same results we're always getting. We need something new. We need to break the cycle. So how do we break the cycle? We learn to observe. Because when we can start to just say, okay, usually I would assume this part of me is bad, I'm just going to get neutral about it. Usually I would assume this behavior is horrible, and this is what I should do about it, and this is what it means about me, and this is what it means about my whole life. I'm just going to observe that, and I'm going to get neutral about it. We start with just learning to observe without making a judgment. And we observe our stories. We observe the things we're telling ourselves. We observe all of this. So I'm about to engage in my behavior, or I'm engaging in my behavior. I can observe all those things that I say to myself about how this is wrong and how this is bad and how I got here and what I'm going to do different. And I can see that. And then I'm just going to be neutral about it for a sec. What if this behavior isn't bad? It's not great. I don't love it. But what if the story I'm telling myself about this isn't true? Is there another perspective? This part of myself that just got me rejected again. This part of myself that now no one even needs to see it. No one even needs to know about it. It's anytime I feel myself getting emotional or whatever it is. I observe my stories. I observe if I'm like this, all these things are going to happen. Look at all of the evidence I have from the past. This part of me is bad. This part of me is bad. This part of me is bad. I observe that. And then I just say, okay, again, what if this part of me isn't bad? I don't have to assume that it's good. I don't have to assume that I have to learn to be my most emotional self and that all of these things. I don't have to force myself into that. What if I can just say, maybe it's not horrible? Just, maybe it's not horrible. So, as an example, I've grown up with chronic illness that I didn't even realize was chronic illness. Chronic physical pain, digestive issues, all of these things that I didn't even realize were abnormal. So I was suffering and having like allergic reactions to basically everything that I ate, and my colon doesn't work for my entire life in all this pain. And like I say, I didn't even know that it was not normal, that what I was experiencing wasn't what everyone was experiencing. So I'm in chronic pain all the time, literally allergic to everything that I'm eating, and I'm reacting and my body's reacting. And because of this, I'm extra emotional, obviously. I'm extra triggerable. My body is not looking and acting and behaving the way that normal bodies look and act and behave, and it's getting me rejected. People are irritated with me, my caregivers are irritated with me, no one knows what's going on with me or really understands what's going on with me, and they just think I'm being dramatic and I'm horrible. So my relationship with my body was that my body was evil and horrible, and I was just weak and everyone else was fine, and I couldn't just be normal, and everything that I did to try to have like a normal body didn't give me a normal body. And I just constantly felt like my body was the worst thing in the world, and it was holding me back, and it was causing me all this pain and causing me to be rejected and all this stuff. And that was true. In real reality, it was in absolute physical pain all the time, which I didn't even, like I say, realize wasn't normal, because it had been my experience my whole life. I didn't have healthy and then get sick, and I think that that's part of the kind of mind fuck that happened for me, is that I was sick my whole life, so I couldn't even describe my experience properly because I didn't realize that the experience I was having was abnormal. And then, like I say, my body was just the source of rejection over and over and over again. So I learned over years and years and years that my body was the worst thing ever, and I hated everything about it. And I got to this place where I was like, okay, like I need, like I tell the story a lot. I had the revelation. My grandma was dieting forever. She had never figured it out. She was always hating herself. And I was just like, okay, I'm not going to be 70 and still hating myself. I'm not going to be 70 and still hating my body. Like, it's just, I don't want to do that. So I'm going to learn to get on my own side. I'm going to learn to start to trust my body. I'm going to learn to love my body and all of these things. And it was all very heroic. And learning about body positivity, like loving your body and loving your curves and loving that your body is all of these things. That felt completely out of reach for me, because I had spent my entire life hating my body, like hating everything about it. So something that I could reasonably reach for, I couldn't reach for, I love the way my body looks and everything is great. I couldn't get there. That was way too far for me. I could reach for, my body is trying its best. I could reach for, I look cute. And so I started to just go with that. To observe my body and assume that I was having symptoms or pain or whatever for a reason. My body wasn't just malfunctioning and being awful and terrible. There was a reason I felt what I felt. I started to say, what if I can just be neutral about how my body looks? I'm just not going to make it a big deal today. And that was what started me on the path that has led me to today, where I've like figured all this stuff out about myself, and I have a pretty good, like, I should be dead based on like all of my things that I have going on in my body and how they were neglected and nothing got taken care of. I really should be dead. But I'm not, and I'm in a like really good place compared to other people who have what I have, purely because I learned to be neutral towards myself first. I learned to be neutral towards my body. I learned to be neutral towards how it looked and how it felt. And then from there, I slowly started to trust that my body has a symptom for a reason. So why is it behaving this way? Why is it doing this? Why is it acting this way? If it's not broken and wrong and bad, what is going on then? And that's how I started to figure all this stuff out. So this is why I say this neutral stance is so important for most of us. So literally, practically, all this means is next time you're about to engage in a behavior that you think is wrong or bad and you think makes you wrong or bad. Next time you're engaging with a part of yourself that you hate and that you think is wrong and bad. Observe, just catch yourself, right? Just being able to notice, okay, I'm in this story, I'm in this loop, I'm in my behavior, that's happening, okay. And then just to say, I'm just gonna get neutral and curious about it. What if it isn't what I'm telling myself? So again, you don't have to say, what if it isn't bad? What if it's good? What if it's awesome? You're just going to say, what if this behavior or this part of myself isn't what I'm telling myself it is right now? I'm just going to get neutral and curious about it. What if it isn't what I already think it is? And I want you to just feel the difference between I already know this part is bad, I already know what to do about it, this is horrible, I shouldn't be doing this, I'm horrible, blah, 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 how that feels, versus just, what if I'm not seeing the whole picture? What if there's more information here? What if it's not as bad as I think it is? Just what if? What if I could make room to observe this part and be neutral about it instead of jumping to my conclusion that I've been trained to jump to and that I've jumped to for my whole life? Can you feel the difference of that? And that's the first step usually towards self-love, is just being able to observe and saying, what if it's not what I think it is? Can you observe? And can you say, what if it's not what I think that it is? That's how we start to turn the train around. So self-neutrality is often the thing that people can reach for when self-love isn't available. And there's absolutely nothing wrong with you, and you're not doing anything wrong, and you're not weak, and you're not behind, and that if self-love is not available to you. If being on your own side feels completely impossible, if it feels like even if you're on your own side, who fucking cares, it doesn't change anything, you're still going to be in the situation you're in, you're still going to be unsupported, you're still going to be all that stuff, I get it. And I hear you, and totally, your pain is valid. There's nothing wrong with you. And if you can just start to observe and just make room to question your story, just be neutral. What if there's something else? That's the beginning of this. So does this make sense? I hope that this makes sense. That we can learn to just be observing, neutral. And again, not that we don't feel our feelings or that we pretend we don't feel what we feel. We observe all of that stuff. Because developing that observer witness part is the beginning of developing the part of ourselves that can observe and then love us. Because that's also just steps that we build on. We go from being able to witness to being able to be curious, to being able to be compassionate, to being able to be unconditionally loving, to being that presence with ourselves. It's steps. So as we develop that witness, we start to develop the capacity to see what we've never seen before, and then to be able to do what we've never done before. So self-neutrality is hugely important. And I think it's incredibly awesome. So hopefully this sparked some ideas, this gave some inspiration, some tools, some practicality. Just can you observe yourself in your usual stories about your behavior and about your parts of self? And can you just say, what if I'm not seeing the whole picture? What if there's something more here? That's it. Can you step into that kind of neutrality and see where that takes you? Okay? So that's what I wanted to talk about today. Hopefully that was helpful. Hopefully that was practical. You are completely worthy of your own love. And I just want to say over and over and over again, there's nothing wrong with you. You're not doing anything harmful on purpose because you want to hurt yourself or others. You learned, you adapted, you inherited. All of us did. And our power is in finding that safety so that we can observe, take in new information, and then start to do different things that get better results. That's all it is. And this doesn't make you a worse or a better person. It's just about building a life that works better for you to the degree that is possible for you. Okay? Okay. So thank you for listening. Thank you for being here. I'll see you in the next video. And until then, mwah, all my love. See you later.